everybody. I am Dr. Amy Nelson, and today I thought we'd talk about food sensitivity testing because we haven't talked about that in a while. This is interesting. So I worked at the IBS Treatment Center in Santa Monica. It was, I had that gig for probably about a little over a year, and I was the first associate doctor in that area, so I was proud of myself for that. But we studied really tough irritable bowel cases. And so with our method, we would study IgG, IgA, and IgE antibodies to the foods that people were eating, right? And of course, this is more of a treat the cause kind of approach. A lot of people kind of get kicked out of the GI doctor's office and told they just have irritable bowel syndrome, have a nice day. Or maybe they give some medication or something like that. But the limitations, I think, in that office is the food allergy testing or food sensitivity testing. And actually even to kind of distinguish between allergy and sensitivity is a thing. That's kind of where some things get lost in the semantics, because truly an allergy is an IgE mediated response. And if the tissue affected is the upper airway, or the mouth, then you definitely need an EpiPen. Like think of people who are allergic to nuts or, have some type of really sensitive reaction or allergic reaction like that. So the swelling can involve the airway, and that's an emergency medicine measure. That's usually what an allergist is working up for you. Like, hey, what kind of allergy reaction do we have? Now, I always have to tell this to people because the celiac person isn't allergic to wheat, they're sensitive to it. So the sensitivity is usually IgG and IgA mediated or IgA mediated. That happens down in the digestive system. You can have IgE mediated responses that happen down in the digestive system as well, and it can contribute to your, leaky gut or your irritable bowel and that kind of thing too. It's just the GI system is not your airway. So there's different kind of respect to that, I guess, when we're looking at food allergies versus a sensitivity or, versus like the emergency medicine procedure for something. I do tell people when we're talking about food, if they're like, gosh, my lips tingle or my tongue itches or my mouth itches or something, we're watching out for that because usually that's like the first sign something is an IgE mediated response in the, upper airway, right? So they may need to go get some help from the allergist to get that determined if they need an EpiPen with them or if they need to be very careful about certain foods, right? So you kind of just listen to people and how they describe their reactions. So I always kind of give these little visual aids. So this is US Biotech. I use them a lot with food allergy testing. And you would usually get a page like this that has like a graph, right? And sorry if this is backwards. But basically like you'll get a titer level or a graphic that'll show you like how reactive you are to certain things. And so let me see if I can just turn this around. And I can. Awesome. So here you're going to see we've got 3 antibodies tested, IgA, IgG, and IgE. Let's see if I can show you that. Good. And so here, maybe this will pick it up better. Yeah. So the food allergy testing, you want to cast a wide net, okay? So here what we want to make sure of is that we've got like as many antibodies as we can kind of muster. Now, if tomorrow an antibody IgM is part of a testing profile, that's probably good. That's probably an improvement, right? So here, like I said, you want to cast a wide net. That's one big mistake a lot of tests make is that they don't really test enough antibodies and you're going to get false negatives. So the first question I usually ask when I see food allergy tests of any sort is, what are the antibodies that they're testing, right? So here you're going to see each one has a different color. So over here, this is a lot of IgA for dairy, right? And also the IgG is not great. So this is a situation where you're going to see that, okay, this is obviously a dairy reaction. We've got category 6 going on. It's really, anything that's kind of in the red zone is really inflammatory, right? And then here we see the meat and the fowl section, which is pretty low, right? So we're going to take dairy away from this person. And, obviously we're going to ask them what their symptoms are. I think, irritable bowel is probably a common thing. So here we see that, oh, wow, I think this person has some dairy sensitivities. Sensitivities are IgG and IgA. And that means it's going to cause problems. It's just not an allergy. Now, if you're at the restaurant and they ask you, are you allergic to dairy? They just want to know if they can feed it to you or not. So say no. Say, yes, I am allergic to dairy. Like, you don't have to sit there and go into the immunology with the wait staff about, like what your reactions are. Now, I have noticed that they will say, is this a gluten sensitivity or gluten allergy or gluten preference, right? And maybe on that day, I usually say it's my sensitivity because I don't want to have to take enzymes to, to actually remedy the situation, right? So it depends on you. If your gluten sensitivity is pretty low, then you can get away with some cross-contamination, then that's fine. But for me, because my skin issues happen and digestive issues happen, I usually really kind of am strict about it, right? So here, this is a miscellaneous category, and you can see coffee bean was really high for this person. Cane sugar, honey, all of it, baker's yeast and brewer's yeast, those are elevations. So these are things to start to eliminate. So you're going to promote the things that are low inflammatory and take away the things that are high inflammatory. Same thing here with the fruits. You're going to see we're going to promote apple and apricot and grape and orange, and then we're going to get rid of things like blueberry, cranberry, banana, pineapple. Now, for how long? Well, 8 to 12 weeks is usually a good window, especially if these are high, if these are really, big categories. If they're just kind of in this little transition zone of category like 2, then maybe you'll give them a break for a few weeks, like scallops here. But here you can see clam, crab, and scallop. Those are shellfish, right? You don't see a lot of lobster there, but you're going to start wondering if this person is developing a little shellfish sensitivity or problem. So you'll talk to them about that. Over here, here's the gluten side of things, right? So here's gluten and gliadin. You can see those two right there, right against corn. And then I always look at the gluten-containing grains. So here's other wheat, and that would just mean other proteins. So there's rye, there's spelt, barley, and so here we can see kidney beans are having problems. Amaranth is up there. So there's a lot of like category 2, almost category 3. So those might take 8 to 10 weeks or so. And nothing is like, it's not like you just schedule this healing with your bowel. It's really up to your body. Everybody asks that question. How long will it take me to get better? It's a factor of many things. So I always talk to them about that. We are going to guess the answer to that question, but your GI system is going to answer that. So if you give, let's say, beans a break for 12 weeks and you reintroduce them and you're bloated and have gas and a loose stool, well, then maybe you're 16 weeks, and that's just that, right? So here you're going to see, doing kind of some reaction here. Like you can see here, vegetables are great. So this person, what did we just see? They probably would do great with a dairy or without dairy, but with like a paleo diet, right? Maybe we modify the fruits a wee bit and kind of go from there, right? So that's how those kind of blood tests work. And this is a blood test. Usually you give the phlebotomist this little kit. So we usually hand this kit and then they go to the phlebotomist and have it drawn. And then it gets sent to Seattle, which is where US Biotech lives. And then they generate this test within a couple of weeks. And it's really good because it helps us guide somebody through their own anti-inflammatory diet. And it's not just the general anti-inflammatory diet, because that can be restrictive, so sometimes people get really frustrated with their GI, with their diets, because like, hey, I'm on this strict diet and then I'm going to add this other strict diet and then I'm going to fast a little bit, and pretty soon that gets frustrating. So sometimes they come in a state of frustration and you might want to say, hey, let's do a food allergy test to see if we can let you have certain foods. Sometimes I test this to see what they can eat, Now, we have talked about like, GI flora overgrowths or bacteria overgrowths, and even parasitic infection and yeast overgrowths. That's different, so like when we talk about the low FODMAP diet, that's going to be something that is, talked about a lot with SIBO, right? So that's different than this. And that's always good to know, is that there's two avenues for this inflammation. We've got, in this case, gluten, dairy, a lot of stuff that's inflaming the tissue. Then we've got, like, say, well, if we eat things that feed the flora overgrowth, then there's a flora overgrowth going on, and it's fermenting things. And that fermentation, well, we know what that does. It makes alcohol. It makes a type of byproduct that's very reactive oxidative species for the tissue, right? Kind of, I don't want to say poisons, but yeah, I want to say poisons the tissue. And it also causes that reactivity, a lot of gas, a lot of bloating, discomfort, loose stool, could be constipation too. And it really starts to have a flora problem. So there's two avenues for the same type of gut reaction. There's the actual sensitivities that go on and that, kind of like inflame the tissue. And then there's stuff that feeds the flora in a funky way, and they ferment, and that inflames the tissue, So it's kind of interesting. And it's hard to wrap your brain around, because you're like, most of us are pretty linear in our thought process. And a lot of times there has to be more than one, sometimes there's more than one answer to the riddle, right? And fixing it is possible, right? So I usually tell people, okay, we have these timelines of ways to get rid of something. And when you reintroduce it, the idea is you reintroduce something and you don't reintroduce another thing, another variable for another 4 days, right? So you're going to give yourself 4 days to be like, how do I act on dairy? And then if you monitor your skin, you monitor your GI system, you monitor your nervous system. So my reactions, if I eat dairy, usually I'm crankier. I've noticed I'm tired. And then if I eat it, I definitely get rosacea. I'll have some skin reactivity that goes on. So I'll have like redness right here. It's almost like tried and true with gluten. If I eat gluten, you can watch rosacea happen like right in front of you. Maybe I'll do that next week. No, I won't. Because I don't like the way I feel on gluten at all. Like it gives me a headache. It makes me grumpy. It raises up my anxiety. And a lot of times you find that your nervous system is the first place where you have inflammation, right? So when you kind of get more sensitive to your body, you start realizing like, golly, I don't feel good on this, or my brain doesn't work on this. My foggy thinking goes crazy on this. And so that's your first sign that you've got some inflammation. Now, when you're eating clean and like no inflammation, oh my gosh, things really fall into place, so a lot of things go right when my best diet is usually, fish, like my body loves fish. And then, meats and stuff like that too. And then vegetables, and then, fruit I have reintroduced quite a bit, because I used to take it away because my flora wasn't right. Now I add it, but I don't go crazy on it, because I've noticed people are funny. They go, I eat a lot of fruits and vegetables. Oh, good. Tell me which ones. Well, and they list it out, and I'm like, those are all fruits. Where are the vegetables? So a lot of times the vegetable list is way less than the fruit list. And I get that. I mean, fruit's yummy. It's sweet candy. And so, if it's, one of those things. So when I eat fruit, I try to get like a variety. I love kiwi. Kiwi's great right now. And then, things like, mango can be really sweet. So you limit that stuff. Use your taste buds. If it tastes like sweet candy, it's got a lot of fructose in it. And if you overeat that, you'll probably have a bacterial overgrowth happen or something going on. So I usually get like more of the sour like things like berries, and citrus can be that way too, apples. So I want more of like a tart, flavor. Not so much like sweet is the only flavor. And you know what? Like when you train your body to not like be sugar addicted, like you notice that there are so many other flavors in the world. Like I've done that before, where I've gone like off sugar, or just, really minimize that. And when you eat like say somebody's pastry or a cupcake or something, and you're like, this is just all sweet. There's no other flavor to it. It doesn't taste good. It just tastes like you're licking sugar, you know? So I love things that have like a really good chocolate flavor or almond flavor or whatever it is, like, or whenever I cook something like a treat, you know, I like to put, I have this silly recipe and I bring it here all the time for a celebration, but it's a gluten-free brownie, and then I put cherry, so I put the cherry juice. So you can get like a can of cherries, or Trader Joe's used to sell this. I don't know if they do anymore, but it was like tart cherries in this jar. So I like to go look to see if I can find like a, you know, like a jar of like canned cherries. That's the best one. But if I can't find it, I can get away with just like a can of cherries, right? And it's not like pie filling cherries, it's just the tart cherries. So it's in the juice medium, and it's really sour. And so you drain off the juice out of it, and I use the juice as the, whatever the recipe's calling for, like water or something. I just use the cherry juice in it. And then I chop up the cherries. And again, they've got a lot of water to it, so a lot of times I have to cut back the recipe for that. Oh yeah, have you ever made black bean gluten-free? I have not. That sounds awesome. Tiffany, you have to put that recipe down. That sounds really fun. But anyway, I'll talk about this cherry thing, because you know what else I do? This is really fun. You put beets in it. So you can stick cherries and beets in brownies, and in your gluten-free chocolate brownies. The flavor is crazy. People don't even know it has beets in it half the times. And I think you could probably even just grind up the beets. I usually put the chunks in there. So I put the cherries, I chop them up in the same size that I chop up the beets, and I put them in the recipe. And sometimes I have to cut the liquid back a lot, because if you're making a brownie, brownies don't like a lot of liquid. That's why they're a brownie. But cake, I've made this as a cake too. Cake is super fun, because then it really, you know, it's like a moist cake too. So anyway, I bring it here, and then what I really do is you have the roots of the beets, and I save them, and then I usually put them poking out of the pan of the brownies or the cake, and it looks like little rat tails out of the cake. Which is so fun, because whoever you're making this for, you just say, hey, happy birthday. And they look at this thing and they think it's crazy. And it is. And so it is really fun, though, to decorate with the beet tails, because it looks horrifying. It's a great thing for Halloween, I suppose, or if you really just want to mess with somebody. And so, and then when they're eating it, they're eating beets. And I swear, even if people are like, I hate beets, I hate them. I used to say that too. This, you can't even taste it. It's so, it matches with the chocolate and the cherries so much that it's really cool. And then sometimes, like, if I have to use a frosting, this is like a riddle we should solve. Frosting's hard, right? Because frosting's what, powdered sugar and butter with a little bit of like vanilla extract or something. So I'm always trying to figure out, okay, you know, to get a powder in there, I wondered if we could use, like, say, D-ribose or something, or a sweetener like inositol. Oh, I have had failed experiments with this. Sometimes I cut the powdered sugar back quite a bit, and I'll add something else like an inositol to try to get less of a sugar bomb. Otherwise, just, you're gonna have to use powdered sugar, right? And then I usually use like Kerrygold butter is a really good one. But I mean, if you're dairy free, you'd probably have to use a shortening of some sort. Frosting's hard, because it's just, you know, it's the texture is so specific to what you have to use, your ingredients, that if you make substitutes, it usually messes it up somehow. But anyway, my frosting recipe is usually just a buttercream. And then I usually stick a lot of flavors in there. My one secret recipe is, Trader Joe's used to have this. It's actually an almond extract, but it's in kind of like a thicker, what would they call it? It's emulsified. So it was like, it wasn't as watery, and it was actually in kind of like a thicker oil, I want to say. So you would use like a dollop of that. But it's been hard to find it. I mean, it's been years since I've been to Trader Joe's, and when I went there, I couldn't find my two favorite things. I think they discontinued them. They were like that almond, emulsified almond extract, and then their tart cherry. So Trader Joe's did me wrong. I was really disappointed by them. But I went to like HEB, will have like, you know, a comparable thing, but it's just I think the texture of that emulsified almond was great. So I miss that stuff even to this day. And then another thing, pinch of salt. So like if I'm really making somebody a treat, like a birthday cake or something, and I'll, you know, you can frost it. Oh, I just thought of this. I bet like with, you know, chocolate frosting, since we're on a chocolate theme, you probably can cut the powdered sugar back and add your cocoa powder, you know, so like a really good, like, they sell this all over the place, like almond, or not almond, what's almond on my brain? Cocoa powder that is just organic, non-sugar, it's just powder, right? So you're going to add your own sugar to it, and usually you add your own fat to it if you needed to, or you use it in baking, right? So that cocoa powder, that's organic and non-sweetened, that would be great to go in your buttercream recipe, right? And it would kind of cut your powdered sugar down a little bit, so you don't create diabetes. And so what happens then is, you know, you whip all that up, but pinch of salt and all of that. And even like in the batter too, if I taste it, I'm like, it needs a pinch of salt. That salt, you know, will bring out the flavors of things. It brings out the sweet, it brings out the flavors of everything. And so that's a fun thing to do. So, yeah, anyway, that's my like treat. So if anybody, you know, it's your birthday and you want me to make that for you, let me know. And it's really kind of wild, but, it's gluten-free. You can make the frosting dairy-free if you want to. You'd have to kind of maybe think of a different thing, but sometimes I, you know, let the, grass-fed butter kind of go. And I myself, like I can't take dairy, but I can eat Kerrygold butter, and it's probably because butter doesn't have a ton of casein and whey in it. It's fat, that's why it's butter. So that's probably going on there. But anyway, so yeah, that's a fun recipe there. But food allergy testing, back to that, food sensitivity testing, very valid. Like I want to stress that. This week I had somebody tell me the unfortunate story that, well, my medical doctor says those are not valid. And I just wanted to be like, they are valid. They have a lot of validity behind them. Go to US Biotech and read about how they validate all this stuff, how they come up with the, you know, the reference ranges for things, and how they test this. This testing is valid. It's ELISA testing, which is enzyme-linked serological assay. That's been around since the 1940s. That's how we screen the blood supply for HIV and hepatitis and all these, you know, it's how we make sure that there's no viral load in a blood supply. And it also, like, a lot of viral testing is done through ELISA testing. Usually, we talked about this before, ELISA testing is a screening assay. You usually have a confirmatory assay. So in science, you want like two different tests that test things in different ways, telling you the same thing. Then that increases your certainty. Oh, good. Do you recommend food sensitivity testing check-ins for people who have, you know, for people who have allergies or celiac? That's a good point. So this test runs around $300, and sometimes, yeah, I'll have people like once a year want to come in and see what's going on. I also hook things to symptoms quite a bit. So remember, the confirmatory assay for food allergy testing is your symptoms, you know? So I'm always talking to them about like, hey, is this gone? Is that gone? Or in even in autoimmune cases, if the rheumatoid arthritis symptoms are better and the rheumatoid factor is better. And, you know, so you can kind of tie things into that quite a bit too. I have a lot of people with autoimmune markers that when we do the anti-inflammatory type diets, then those go down, and symptom relief. So that's important to know too, because sometimes we forget a person is hooked to this test. You know, whenever I teach lab diagnostics, I talk to the students about that. I'm like, you have a person who has symptoms and you want to talk to them. And if you're like, wow, and especially this is important, like let's say here this was low with eggs, right? So if my person is like, oh my God, when I eat eggs, it's like I've been kicked in the stomach. And you're like, gosh, I see low IgG, IgA, and IgE to egg. Now, did I say they could have egg? Mm-mm. Because in science or in testing, it's hard to test for the absence of something, right? So I can say you don't have these 3 antibodies that were elevated. Do you have inflammation to egg? Well, if you just told me you ate eggs and it feels terrible, that means my test didn't pick up why that symptom's going on for you. It's not to medically gaslight you and say, no, eggs are fine. I don't know, my test, you can eat eggs, because I have limitations to this test, right? I only tested 3 antibodies. Remember in the beginning, if I was like, hey, another antibody was invented, we're going to test that one now too. Oh, yay, because maybe this is a false negative for some reason, or maybe the eggs are creating an inflammation that's from a completely different avenue than what I'm testing here. So know the limitations. That's to really, really validate yourself, is to know your limitations. Same thing with the doctor who said these weren't valid tests. Guess what, buddy? They are, and you don't know something, and you get to learn something new today. But if you think you know it all, you probably aren't going to learn something new, right? So you see, egos get in the way of stuff all the time. And it's important to know a limitation going into something. And with learning and growing, you're going to see more functional medicine is going to embrace the ideas of naturopathic medicine and treating the cause. That is awesome. Like, I'm signing up for my CEs. I have a lot of CEs to do because I have to renew my license next year. And I am so thrilled that there are like these functional medicine CEs that bring medical doctors and naturopathic doctors together and explore, treating the cause. That's awesome, So it's kind of enlightening things, and it's expanding knowledge. If we never look and learn and grow, then we stay in this little narrow mind, right? And so that is something that you have to always be expanding. So if a doctor says that, I think they're mistaken, Oh, good. Is that the same with eating eggs in a recipe that you feel fine, but eggs hard-boiled makes someone feel nauseous? Could be. Yeah, so think about, this is a great question. In a batter or something, remember you have like maybe 2 eggs in this whole batter, right? So it's probably just by ratio. You're eating the entire egg, so you have so many more of those proteins, and versus the egg where you're probably eating, I don't know, a 1/32 of it, so probably the egg itself is to bind up the batter, right, and make it gloppy. And so if someone's got a bad sensitivity though, they probably can't eat. They have to bake with something different. They have to bake with like chia seeds, or you can use applesauce, or you can use like banana, a ripe banana or something. It just keeps the batter in that texture. So if they are really bad with their egg reaction, yeah, they got to be careful about even the batter. But if they're like, say, category 2, 3, maybe they can get away with eating the batter that had 1 egg for that whole recipe, right? Because you're not eating the whole, let's pretend you're not eating the whole pan of brownies. No, you're not, someone's stopping you. So anyway, that's what happens in my house. If something tastes too good, then I'm like, all right, intervention time. We have to go hide this. I will hide it for myself. Or you cut out the portion that you're going to eat, and then you stick the rest in the freezer. That's how to help yourself, especially if you have a freezer in the garage. Now you have to go find it. Or if you bake something yummy, you have to share that with every single person you know. So that helps it too. That's how I curb that. That's how I don't eat the pan of brownies, because I'm like, this is too yummy. So anyway, yeah, so that'll also, you're just eating less egg probably, but yeah, it's really interesting. Duck egg is on this test too, and what's funny is duck egg and chicken egg have similar proteins. So a lot of times duck egg will come up and people are like, I do not eat duck egg, whatever. And then I'm like, well, I think it's just a cross reaction. It means don't start eating duck egg. I think your body isn't gonna know the difference between a chicken egg and a duck egg for you. You're still gonna be inflamed by it. So yeah, that's a great little lowdown on food allergy testing. And so I've had fun with you, Tiffany. We're going to share recipes and make our friends a lot of really good little treats, I think. So I can't wait for you to post your recipe. I want to try that because I love really cool recipes like that. And just adding wild things into, something that tastes really delicious. I'm trying to think of other recipes that I use. Gosh, I'm into that chocolate recipe so much. I should try to figure out some sort of like yellow cake mix recipe that is delicious.
But yeah, post your fun gluten-free baking recipes. It's getting close to that time of year where you get to, make some delicious treats for your office or for your family, and so that would be a fun thing to break out. So anyway, well, I'm gonna go get back to work. It's been fun. Everybody have a good day.